But short of that, we thought we'd show you some pictures of the projects currently and give you a status of their current condition. So this first chart here shows us there's 16 major projects that are in every section of our city that were either approved through a bond program or other funding. One that this council overwhelmingly declared as a cultural icon for Corpus Christi is our water gardens. And I know Councilwoman Campos and I toured it recently with some of the construction work happening. This is on schedule, within budget, and really Park is one of them. You may see if you drive down Ocean Drive, what you see here in front of you here, which is our splash pad that has been added. This is going to put yet another amenity into the Cole Park, which really this is the first pool that this city council approved to be built since 1950. The first brand new pool, so it's coming along great. Our teams go by there quite a bit, make sure progress is coming along well. It's the picture says it all right here. You can see
Drew's coming up to the podium. Related to the city's pursuit of seawater desalination, I still have reservations about that yet, and so that's the basis for my reason for pulling this, and I'm going to be voting against it. Drew, I know you're very good about following up on some of the questions we had last week. I do still have some additional questions yet as well. Some of those kind of prompted by your response yet again also, and I keep getting additional information about this. So I'm sorry some of this is coming at the 11th hour, but I think it's better to ask these questions while I have the chance, even if it is at the 11th hour. As I understand from your responses from last week, correct me if I'm misstating this, because I think I'd asked this last Tuesday about the operational costs, not the cost to build, but the operational cost of a desalination plant. And I thought the numbers you gave me back, this is operational, I believe, and maintenance both. Is that correct? $44 million annually?
Correct. Yes, sir.
That was maintenance as well as operations?
I believe so. Yes, that is correct. $44 million a year.
Right. So I know, again, we referred to this earlier, the HDR study done by, I guess, the Texas Water Development Board back in 2019. They had estimated those same annual operational costs, operational and maintenance costs at, I think, $85 million. That's a pretty large discrepancy.
So I think the best answer for that, Councilman, and that's a good question, the Region N water plan, which is a response, and I don't have the response here, and I think it probably warrants reading the response, because on the Region N water plan, there's a disclaimer that they make in that Region N plan, and that disclaimer basically suggests that these are high-level estimates. They do not take the place of a detailed, site-specific cost estimate, typically done by licensed folks that do this, licensed engineers. So our team has looked at that question that you've asked, and they kind of broken it down even into more detail in terms of trying to get an apple-to-apple comparison. And I don't know if Chuck, if you wanted to talk to that, but I think just kind of adding a little bit of substance to that discussion, because I think, from the standpoint that you're asking, there's two answers. The first one is Region N looks at things at a very high level, and this detailed cost estimate was done at a very detailed level. There's lots of information behind this cost estimate. I mean, it took a lot of time to put this together. Whereas a Region N plan is a large, it's a high level plan. And so Chuck Wolf here, Dr. Wolf, who you saw last week, he's right behind me. We've had some very good conversations about that kind of question. I know Councilman Hernandez also asked the same question. So Chuck, if you wanted to take a little bit more on that one.
So Councilmember Klein, the $86 million number that's in the Region N plan also includes the debt service. So the actual O&M estimate in that plan is $45.4 million plus $840,000.
So just to be clear, the $44 million does not include the debt service cost.
The $44 million does not include the debt service cost in our estimate. Correct.
Okay, all right, very good. So if we work with the $44 million figure, correct me again if I'm wrong, looking at last year's budget, I guess the budget for, I think this is the upcoming budget now, 23-24, for CC Water was $160 million. And so $44 million represents, again, by my limited math skills, 27% increase in CC Water's expenses.
Correct.
So are there plans, where are we going to bring that, where's that going to come from? Is that, I guess, additional revenue from rate payers?
Well, there's two ways to look at that, and I think a big question that's been asked of us, and it's a good question, is how does this impact the ratepayer? And that's something that we have been working on. And I think one of the things that's important to recognize, and I think we all can appreciate this, is we had a very spirited discussion about rates last year, and there were some changes that were made to rates. And rates are as much, and you'll hear the rate experts say it, it's as much of a science as it is an art. And so this is a policy decision in terms of how those rates are implemented. And so we have taken a look at these rates based on the assumptions that we have today. We have an estimate of what those costs would do to the normal residential ratepayer that uses 6,000 gallons a month. That number will probably change because we are getting ready to go into a rate season. This is the natural normal time of the year. We're doing this every year. So we're going to be doing this. We have our consultant, the same one that was here last year, is on board. Nugen is the name of that company, and we're working with them, with those folks. And so that is something that we will be honing in on exactly how these rates will impact everybody. And the other side of it, but the answer to your question is two things. There is going to be a rate impact. And there may be some questions that we will have to talk about as we get into the budget planning season in terms of what are the priority projects? What projects can we afford? And those will be questions that this council here will have to decide, because ultimately, there will be an impact to the ratepayer.
Right. So I mean, currently, right now, as we speak, residents pay more for water than industry does. We closed the gap last fall, or as of January 1st, I guess now, but there's still a discrepancy of more than $1 per 1,000 gallons that residents pay in addition, excess $5.08 versus, what is it, $3.95, 94 cents, something like that, thereabouts. And so is that assuming that that same discrepancy persists, or I wonder if you factor that in, perhaps creating, we use this word, equity in water rates, which we don't currently have right now. We've gotten closer to that. We have not achieved it just yet.
You know, that's a great question, and I think that that question is best answered by the folks that we're going to have here looking at that, the new gen folks.
Right.
And with input from this council, we will be looking at those very questions and hopefully having that debate and hopefully having a rate structure that meets the needs of the city, and it's an equitable rate, as you said.
Because if there's an additional $44 million that has to come in to CC Water to cover the costs, just the operational costs rather than construction costs, just the operational costs of the desal plant. If the rates for industry were raised to those equal to what they are for residents now, that would help to alleviate some of that $44 million cost.
If rates go up for one particular customer class, there's no doubt that will help close the gap.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So
questions, but I'm going to go back to the price or the cost. Okay, I remember when we were discussing the water rates, and I think we all felt pretty good that we were able to finally raise the rates on the raw water. It's not equitable, but we're getting there. And one of the things I heard was that it's very likely that our industrial partners would actually appeal that to the Public Utilities Commission. Is that still a possibility, that even if we continue, like now we're saying that, we're all going to be equal, we're all going to be fair about this, but they actually have, more power, I feel, than the people do. So how are we going to combat that? That, here we just started to raise their rates, and what I hear is that they're getting ready to appeal that. So how do we combat that?
Councilwoman, I don't have a good answer for you on that. I really don't. I mean, that's something that, if they decide to appeal it, that's their right to appeal it.
Yeah,
So
well-
I don't know if they will. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, because for them, we went up, I think, was it 200% on the raw water? I think it was something like that.
It was overall, Councilwoman, not just the raw water, but the rate modeler suggested rates that were more favorable to every ratepayer.
Well, I just hope
industry.
industry is listening, that, if they want this raw water, they need to pay fairly for it.
They do, and can I just add, Councilwoman, that being large volume use, it helps the entire rate base and all customers. So when one of the large volume users came on, the residential rates went down. So large volume users help us. Having a system where there's multiple types of customers helps residential customers. Our rates actually went down when you have people paying in and buying the water.
But at the same token, we're also paying for water that we're not getting, just like through the Mary Roads. We were just discussing that, here we are paying for the Mary Roads pipeline. We're supposed to be getting, I forget about the amount, but we're still we're paying for it, but we're not getting it. So in the same token, we're not using, or we're not addressing our water problems correctly. I guess, I keep asking, how do we end up like this, that we don't have water for the residents? And a lot of that, again, has to do with all of us being part of the community. We keep saying, if we're in a drought, we're all in a drought. But when we have previous councils that give, breaks like exemptions, we're not treated the same. And it just, I think it's very unfair, and we're at a point right now where I know that I'm in a minority on this council, but I hope that the rest of the city is listening and is paying attention and realizing that we, the ratepayers, it'll be on our backs. The industry customers can't afford, whatever rate we give them, and it's true, because they'll pay for it. But at the end of the day, it'll be us, the people that are on fixed incomes, the people that are not even, like yesterday, I went to Moody and registered some students, and I just asked them about desalination, if they even knew what it was. Not one of them knew. And I said, look, we're making decisions on you. In a few years, you'll have to be the one to pay for this. So I hope we're all listening, and I hope that we consider tabling this with more information.
Want to look at the bottom example more than the top example.
So you're really basing this on us selling more water, right?
The bottom scenario is based on selling more water. We need more water because we saw some projections in our presentation last week over the next 10 years, 15 million gallons a day for residential, just residential, and that didn't include our commercial and our larger commercial customers. So I think it's pretty well understood that we have more need, so we need more water, and so we're going to sell it.
But the reason that we have more need, well, for the resident is because industry is taking more than the people need. I mean, if we were to stop selling to industry, then the people would have more water, correct?
We look at our water demand needs as a whole. And
Right, but
we
if
know
we
we know what those are going to be in the future.
But if we
so
keep
we're-
inviting industry, heavy water users, we're going to keep getting into this hole. So that's the point here, that it doesn't seem to matter how much water we get, because we keep selling it. and we
Councilwoman,
keep paying for it.
and I respect your position, but we are also going, just like we do for, the master plans, for example. There's a master plan, right, that says, here's the vision. And so the vision includes additional, industry coming in and all of those people. It includes building more homes, et cetera. I understand your position and I respect it, but they can't tell you, you're wanting them to tell you, it sounds like that, well, this is all because of industry. This is a culmination of everyone. And again, I respect your perspective because I know it, and that's okay. But this is a culmination of everyone. Every family, that whether they work for industry and therefore industry needs water, or work at Walmart, it's for everyone. But just let's,
No, I do, Mayor, I respect that, but not when we city council keep making these decisions on selling our water and thinking that we were going to already have desalination when we sold it to Exxon Savic. So this is, one of the reasons that we're in this situation. So that's all that I'm trying to prove here, is that let's stop making these decisions that, here we are trying to put the cart before the wheel, because we don't have the permit. We have a draft permit, okay? That's a fact. And we don't have also the Army Corps' permit. We haven't done that either. We also have a Title VI that is still in the works. So all this we're doing, and we don't even have all these things lined up that we should have. That's all I'm saying.
No, I understand.
And
You
here
have the
we're
right,
pushing-
you have the
we're
right to say
moving
that.
forward.
We're the policymakers, though. They are doing what they were asked to do by the city manager. The city manager is doing what he was asked to do by a council. So I get your point, but they're doing what they were told to do. We don't go out and research and become experts and become biologists and scientists. They, we've spent millions on that, as you well know, So they're just bringing to you the information, and then you move forward with your position, which is, again, respected.
Yes, and we're put in a very troubling position, because like you keep saying, the numbers just, they're like a moving target. We don't really have good set numbers, because, we had our city manager quoted last week in the news that it was maybe 550 or 650 million, and then, 2 hours, 3 hours later, we find out it's more like 757 million. I mean, it's awful how these numbers, and it's millions. I mean, we don't even think twice. I mean, anyway, I'll be quiet, but I guess you know how we're going to be voting.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Hernandez.
Okay, so you're adding 183 million to our 456 million. right, that we have currently in principle, adding 103 million today, or this year, you're going to add, I'm assuming the 200 million is going to happen this year?
No, it happens
Is it going to be
in the
spread
next
out?
just like you stated,
be spread out.
2005, 2025, and 2026.
Okay, so, and then on top of the, so if you take that out, there's another 200 million, on top of that, 109 million, to a total of 343 million. And all that's only going to raise our rates for the average household, 53 cents and 99 cents over the next 2 years.
Well, the difference between 3906 and 4140 is, in that council-approved rate line, is the amount that the CIP that's budgeted right now, so that includes the 105 and the 105 for desal, and all the other projects that are in the
Okay.
budget for CIP for fiscal year '24.
So when we break this down, and I'm assuming, you're talking about what it costs for an average household of 6,000 to be 53 cents in 2025, right? So if we break that down on a per 1,000-gallon basis, that means our water rates are, for next year, only going to go up 15 cents?
Based on our analysis here, the changes in the revenue requirements based on the revised amount for the construction costs, that 53 cents is the additional amount for that, yes, for year 2025.
And 9 cents. Okay, so that's just for our debt service, but it doesn't take into consideration any operating expenditures, chemicals, or anything?
That's the difference in the 3906 and the 4140.
Okay, so,
Those were already programmed in the rate model for the assumptions of, 3% per year for operating, those calculated increases every year.
okay, so in September, when we come to council, I'm only going to expect less than 15 cents for a water rate increase?
Well, we have a lot to do before then. We're
Okay,
going to be
because-
starting the rate model and budget process.
Well,
in
these
the
are your
next
numbers.
month.
These are your numbers.
Yes, and the numbers from on the council-approved rate line is what was in the model last year with the approved rates that you approved effective this
January,
month.
just this January, it started January 1st, right, or somewhere in that?
But
in there.
our rate model update will include revised data from fiscal year '23. It'll include a CIP that's been updated with, hopefully, the desal, the difference. And then we'll have a lot better focus on the equitable cost of service between the ratepayers, the residential, commercial.
Okay, I'm gonna
We're
keep-
going to have that
I'm gonna
conversation
keep
in
this.
September, June.
I'm going to keep
probably.
this for
July,
a
August.
discussion.
Yeah, you can,
And
Councilman, just the 15 cents, we don't want to mislead people, so that is per thousand, right?
That's per thousand, right? This
Yes,
is on
but that's
average
Right, but it's a
for
very low number, the average customer
53
uses-
cents for an average
If I
of
can finish,
6,000.
Councilman? Yes, sir. I just don't want people to think that that's all, that the bill, this is a monthly bill, so that's 6,000 gallons times 15, or if you use
Right.
7,000 or 8.
Right,
so-
and I prefaced that. I said,
Okay, all people know
1,000-gallon
numbers is
basis.
15 cents.
The line for the desal, 30 million gallons a day, also includes the annual drought surcharge exemption fund contribution that lowers the debt service. So it also includes that amount in there,
and the 25 cents is roughly, what, 3 million a year?
4.5 million. a year.
4.5 million?
I think it was 4.8 last year, but we're conservative and we budgeted 4.5 annually.
Okay. All right, so that'll answer that question. Hopefully, we'll be talking about 15-cent water rate increase. Put you guys on record to say that we're going to have a relatively minor rate increase. But at the end of 2029, that total per household is going to jump up to, what, $28 per person per household increase?
Are you looking at the top one or the bottom one?
I'm looking at the top one.
Okay.
So when you add them all, because it's cumulative, right? It's not $15 and then it's a cumulative of year over year, right? So at the end of, at 2029, everybody's water bill, and just the water rate, is going to have an increase of $28.04 on a typical house. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Based on the model as of today, which will change in about 6 months.
Well, I would imagine it would go up, considering prices always go up with inflation, right? Chemicals aren't getting any cheaper, construction isn't getting any cheaper, so I would imagine this is probably going to be higher than $28 at the end of 5 years.
But we did do very well last year in revenue, so that impacts our fund balance, which then impacts this too.
Well,
So there's a lot that we have to look up during the budget process.
I hope we do a better job in understanding the rates, because honestly, this past cycle was just terrible. I still can't explain what the rates are, what are based on, other than an increase over the previous year. Okay, so I would hope we'd have a very, very robust discussion and have an understanding, because, and this gets into the next part here, we have done a terrible job of selling this, desal. I mean, absolute terrible job. And we have people screaming at us, telling us we're going to kill the environment, We haven't done a good job in terms of how that is. And honestly, I didn't ask a lot of the environmental stuff because I understand it. I understand the reason I have not been in support of this because it is not scalable beyond 30 million gallons a day, or 32 million specifically. So, I think we're going to be looking for water again in 10, 15 years. Because as soon as we have water, there's going to be another company out there, and the port's been talking about clean hydrogen, and they're going to come in and say, hey, we'd like to buy water from you, and we're going to say yes because we need the revenue, and then we'll be out there looking for water again. Okay, so, and then the groundwater, because we ignored them for 2 years, now their prices are jacked up because of all the increase in costs. So we have a lot of issues that we could have done better. If we had a better estimate beginning, not the $3.50 to $4, but if we had a realistic estimate, like the region end estimate that suggested it was $7, we wouldn't have passed up on previous opportunities. So that's on us. We failed. The city failed. The staff failed. And Drew, like I said, not you. You weren't here. Okay, but there's a lot of blame to go around. I couldn't convince other council members to move forward with a wastewater reuse or groundwater at the time when we had the R5 presentations. To the mayor's credit, she voted for it to go forward to those things, and I believe Councilman Garza, but nobody else did. Okay, I didn't do enough to argue that we could have done better. We could have done more. We could have looked at other options. But now all our eggs are in this desal basket for the Inner Harbor. And it doesn't look pretty, but we put them all there, and now we're stuck. So when we look in the mirror, we deserve all the vitriol from both sides. From the people saying you need to get off your butt and get us some water, and the other people saying you're going to destroy our bay. Well, we deserve that because we didn't do a good job. The staff didn't do a good job. Peter Zanoni didn't do a good job. We as a council did a crappy job. And honestly,
Please clarify
Okay.
that, because I don't agree with what you're saying,
But here,
Councilman.
Councilman
I
Hernandez.
wasn't here when y'all talked about water reuse.
sorry, I was using a general
Let's get to
term.
the questions, because others might have questions and get them answered or make your comments. But we're going off on,
Well,
quite a bit that we
I'm making
don't-
my high horse statement. So I apologize if that was too much of a high horse for.
it was a little bit of a
everybody.
high horse.
So speaking of, I just want to make sure that I clarify that we are not scalable beyond 30 million gallons a day. Is that correct?
30 million gallons a day is the maximum output, or 32 million gallons a day. At some point, we all know technologies improve. There's folks that'll tell you in 10 years, some of the brine that is generated from this facility could be used for beneficial use. I've talked to some folks who've said the technology at some point will be such that you could take the brine and electrify it and make sodium hypochlorite, which is a disinfectant. So,
You can also refine it and get lithium out of it as well. But, okay, until that happens, but just in terms of discharge, no more than, it's not, because we had some people in public comment
Right.
come and say that this is a scalable thing, and it's not.
It's 32 million gallons a day
Okay.
in today's world.
I
Yes,
just
sir.
want to clarify that. Also, is there another desal plant inside a closed bay? And when I say closed bay, relatively closed bay.
You guys want to take that?
Yeah, so, we have really wrestled with this one a little bit because there's not a cookie cutter desal plant. This isn't a copy paste, right? They're different everywhere. I will tell you that the Tampa Bay facility is farther inshore than your Inner Harbor is inshore.
Is
The
there-
barrier
they don't have a
islands-
barrier island,
Well, they
right?
do. It's a little different than we have here. But there are desal plants that have unique aspects that you will share. But I don't know of one that shares all of the unique aspects of the Inner Harbor because they really are all different. But Tampa Bay, I believe, is 25 miles inshore. You're about 20 or 22. We've got a lot of people that have worked on that plant, if you'd like to talk to them about.
Is Tampa Bay as shallow as Corpus Christi Bay?
I don't know.
I don't think it is.
Right, and I asked this question last week as well, and Drew was very good about giving me a response about this. So I can ask, I guess, maybe both of you guys about this as well, or you can choose which one you want to, which one wants to respond to it. Asked about whether Freese & Nichols would be willing to sign a damage bond to guarantee its work, that if you're saying that this desalination plant will not damage the bay, that you're willing to put your money behind that, that if it does, if there are consequences that were unforeseen, that were not predicted in your modeling, that Freese & Nichols would be willing to then to provide compensation for that, or cover the cost of those damages. I know that Drew had mentioned in your response that, well, Freese & Nichols is not going to be operating the desal plant or building it as well, so it would be improper. I understand all that, but we're making this decision here based on this modeling done by Freese & Nichols that says that it's not going to damage the bay environmentally. I don't know if I have a question there.
Yeah, Councilman, it's probably more of a legal question than anything else. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that would be something that legal would have to weigh in. I know, this process is going to evolve, and so we've gone through the environmental due diligence work. There's going to be a design and a construction phase, and so we're going to need to make sure that the performance criteria that we all need to hold us to is part of that. So we need to make sure that we meet those criteria, and so certainly the designer and the builder are all going to be held to be accountable for their efforts.
Okay, and lastly, you had mentioned, there was a mention of liability if something goes wrong here. Understand that the design team has, however that works in construction, they have liability of the actual facility. But if the estimates are wrong and we do not have the salinity mixing that we think we're going to have, is there any liability anywhere with anyone?
Miles, do you want to, to me, this is a legal question. I couldn't answer that, Councilman.
The liability is handled with, but your discharge permit is not a permanent permit. It has a 5-year term on it, and just like all of our discharge permits, they are renewed periodically, and that's what we face if we end up with producing a discharge that doesn't stand up to the models that were provided when it was first requested.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Anyone?
Jumping around here, as I said, I think it's best to ask these questions when I have a chance to. I have not heard this before. Maybe maybe it was said and I just didn't hear it. Has an environmental impact study been done of the Inner Harbor, of the site for this project? A full-fledged, approved by the EPA, issued by the EPA, sanctioned by the EPA EIS?
Good question. I appreciate that question. I'm going to look to Jason. If, Jason, you don't mind talking a little bit on the environmental due diligence.
And Councilman Klein, the answer to that is actually relatively easy. No, an EIS or EA officially has not been requested or required, so that has not been done.
Is there concern about the fact that that hasn't been done? Because one man's opinion, I have concerns about that.
There are some universal concerns, but I don't have any. No,
Okay.
sir. And universal, I mean, there are concerns, right? We heard a lot of concerns today. Our
Right.
team does not have any concerns.
Right. All right.
Request items 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 be withdrawn for individual consideration. I oppose items 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 32. It sounds like the city wants to start spending money even before they take on more debt. There is currently a Title VI complaint pending regarding this plant. Have any of the council read this complaint to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the EPA, the U.S. Department of Justice? It is only 44 pages long. Let me read one paragraph. Next slide. The city has chosen to take steps to move forward with this purchase of the property in the Hillcrest neighborhood for the proposed Inner Harbor desalination plant, despite a clear history of discrimination by the city and other governmental entities in the Hillcrest neighborhood and vocal opposition to this proposed location from Hillcrest residents and faith leaders. These ongoing actions reveal the city's prioritization of industrial development in the Hillcrest community that will exacerbate existing disparate harms based on race. The city's decision to move forward with the Inner Harbor location threatens the health, safety, and well-being of the Hillcrest community, and its ongoing actions to site this facility constitute a continuing violation of Title VI. Next slide. Title VI was enacted as part of the Landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964. It prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin in programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. If a recipient of federal assistance is found to have discriminated and voluntary compliance cannot be achieved, the federal agency providing the assistance should either initiate fund termination proceedings or refer the matter to the Department of Justice for appropriate legal action. Without any public meetings in the predominantly historic Black neighborhood of Hillcrest, a case can be made the city is acting in a way that has the effect of discrimination. To spend any time and effort on getting a federal grant before the Title VI complaint is resolved is wasteful. If the city were proposing this desalination plant in the Kings Crossing neighborhood, how would the city handle this process? The Hillcrest neighborhood should be treated the same way the Kings Crossing neighborhood would be treated. As always, have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Weber.
I'd like to first thank Councilwoman Campos and Councilman Klein for your votes last week. And I'm here today to ask you all to follow in their leadership and their courage. Three facts came last week, became part of the public record. Three facts that I have personally been coming up here for 2 years, almost 3 years, to have you understand and put in your heads. And I wish the uninformed pro-desalination activists would understand this. The news, the local podunk news is not going to say this. This council, this body is not going to acknowledge this. But this is now part of the public record. Go back and watch the item discussion from last week. Number one, this plant is the only plant of its kind in the world. He said it straight to Mike Pusley's face last week. There is not another plant in the world that has the intake and the discharge in the same general location. You're gonna be sucking up brine and that thing's gonna shut down. And you know it. This is the only plant of its kind in the world. The other two, that's number one, okay? So do not say that there's plants all over the world that are doing this. Nobody's stupid enough to put the intake and discharge in a closed bay system. Number two, this plant is at $1.7 billion. It was $500 million 5 years ago. And when Esteban Ramos was asked why the price discrepancy, and I quote, he said, and I quote, "Because the model that the Regional Water Planning Group used does not understand desalination. And so your numbers are coming up less than it was 5 years ago. This plant is $1.7 billion right now. This loan, the SWIFT loan, is not going to put a dent in it. The grant is not going to put a dent in it. The $20 million that industry threw at you for unlimited use of our water is not going to put a dent in it. Our water rates are going to absorb this cost." Fact number three, which Councilman Klein brought up, the only two large-scale water desalination plants in this, seawater desalination plants in this country are shutting down every 2 months for cleanings. This is not reliable, it is not uninterruptible, and when he was asked what the backup plan is, he replied, "Well, Councilman, we have to continue to find and fund other sources." So what's going to happen when your disaster shuts down? We know what's going to happen because I've watched you for 2 years perform a psychological operation on this town, telling us to feel guilty for brushing our teeth when you know that the industries are taking between 70 and 80% of our water. What's next? Are you going to tell us how to wash? No to desalination and learn
Thank you,
your
Ms.
facts.
Parkinson. So we have to take the vote, Councilwoman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no.
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 Okay, the motion carries for items 4 through 8. And,
Mr. Hernandez abstained, correct?
oh, is that, are you abstaining from this vote, Mr. Hernandez? Okay. Okay. Item number 28 is an ordinance